Dragons, one of the rarest and most endangered creatures on the planet. So much so that many people do not even believe they exist, never mind study them. Well, I am here to tell you that they do exist. From tiny dragons smaller than a common house cat to dragons the size of literal mountains. They are out there. They are waiting and watching from their caves, caverns, mountainsides, islands, and volcanoes to see what we will do next. Hello, my name is Brittany, and I invite you to embark on this journey of dragons with me for this pilot episode of the Dragonology podcast. Let us start our journey with a question. Will you be the next person to find a dragon? Do you want to find a dragon? If your answer was either yes or I hope so to either of those questions, this episode will serve as your sneak peek into the secret and ancient society of dragonologists. This will be your ticket to see the world through their eyes, through a dragon's eyes. Then, maybe one day, you will be able to see your clear reflection in the eye of the dragon. More about this later. Keep listening to future episodes for insider tricks of the trade from dragonologists throughout history to learn how to track and sometimes even befriend dragons. For each of the first 5 episodes, I will be dedicating time aside to discuss the 5 F's of dragonology. Then, armed with this knowledge and these skills, go forth and study dragons in the wild. However, I highly recommend you not go out on your own until you have listened to all 5 of the episodes, including this one, just 4 more to go, regarding these key factors to being a successful dragonologist. Now, before we get started, if you have any inkling of darkness in you, any thoughts of self-gain or self-profit by means of dragon, begone, dark dragonologist! You are not wanted here. A quick rune spell to stop dark dragonologists from listening should do the trick. Okay, that should do it. Anyone who may still be listening, we're about to tuck our wings and dive in to the world of dragons. Dragonology is one of the oldest and least researched sciences. Dr. Ernest Drake, who passed away in 1912 at the ripe old age of 90, was just one of many well-known dragonologists. He was dubbed the Doctor of Dragonology for his extensive passion and research into the creatures. His research will be the most considered and spoken about in this podcast. The earliest dragonologist on record, being from the 3rd century, was George of Cappadocia. George was a dragon slayer who was mistaken for a Christian saint. How this happened, I am not sure. No one really is. He was followed by a familiar name, the wizard Merlin, who received the title of wizard from his many encounters with dragons. He is considered to be the founding father of Western dragonology. Following Merlin, Beatrice Croak fought to promote harmony between dragons and humans during a tumultuous time in which King Edward I ordered all dragons to be slain. She narrowly escaped being burned at the stake as a witch and went on to form the secret and ancient society of dragonologists with her son. Fast forward to now. Dragonologists are few and far between. As technology and urbanization take hold, the conservation of dragons and dragonkind becomes all the more crucial. The time for dragonologists to make a difference is now. Perhaps that's why you are here, listening to this call to action. If so, then buckle up your dragon saddles and hang on to that back spike, because you're in for an ancient, scaly, bumpy, fiery, twisting and turning ride of a long dragon lifetime. Now we have arrived at the part of the episode where I will go over the 5 F's of Dragonology. The 5 F's are fieldwork, foresight, forwardness, frankness, and fatalities. Today's episode will focus on the first F of the 5 F's of Dragonology, fieldwork. The only way to gain true information and research on dragons is to commit to a life of fieldwork. In fact, the 5 F's of Dragonology are crucial to being a successful dragonologist. The first of which is fieldwork, as mentioned before. Seeing dragons in the wild and seeing how they interact with their environment is beyond what any book can teach you. However, you'll want to make sure to have the right equipment with you on your journey, as going without can be fatal. A list of essential equipment to bring with you on your dragon tracking endeavors. A notebook, preferably fire and or heat-proof. A heat-proof pen to record the day's events. Ink and sketching pencil to sketch your findings. A reasonably powerful magnifying glass to investigate claw marks, teeth marks, footprints, and even scat for evidence of dragons. Special heat protective clothing. I find this one to be one of the most important pieces of equipment on your journey. Cloaks can be especially helpful in a bind. A map of the area, or even a phone with a detailed GPS map and access to the internet. However, you may not be able to rely on cell service where you'll be going. Detailed accounts of flora and fauna of the area to keep your wits and safety about you. A camera, on the off chance you may be able to catch a dragon on camera. Many have tried, all have failed. But maybe you'll succeed. You never know until you try. Alright, now that you've been armed with some preliminary information on the history of dragonology, and have taken the first steps to learn how to successfully track dragons, how about we actually talk about some dragons? I'll just mention one of the more popular species, and where or when they may have popped up in our history for this episode. Whether it be in media, lore, legend, or culture, dragons have had a profound effect on our lives. Some of the more well-known species are the European dragon, or Draco occidentalis magnus, the gargoyle, or Draco occidentalis minimus, and the Asian lung, or Draco orientalis. Stay tuned for other episodes to learn more about gargoyles and Asian lungs. Draco occidentalis magnus, the European dragon. Most people know this dragon for their fire breathing, use of spoken language, and their love of treasure. This species could at one point be found all over the world, but is now confined to a few remote locations. Now they most often can be found in Europe, in coniferous forests, mountainous regions, or on remote islands. Typically, their lairs are caves or sea caverns. These dragons can grow to be 45 feet long and 13 to 17 feet high in adulthood. Their scales can vary in coloration, from red, green, black, sometimes gold, and as they get into older age, some turn white. This particular species sheds its scales triennially. Figure out when these times are, and you may find yourself among a veritable pile of shed dragon scales, just begging to be studied. European dragon eggs are speckled and often a clouded blue or gray in color. No matter how much you may want to touch them, I highly advise you do not, under any circumstances, do so. That is, unless you see someone else making off with an egg, and you happen to rescue it. This may incline the mother dragon to be friendly towards you, but this is not, by any means, a guaranteed response. Things to look out for would be their flame, swinging tail, sharp claws, and horns, which they will readily use in defense, especially of their young. If you are looking to befriend or trap a dragon to tag them, might I suggest you use cattle or sheep for bait. But be very aware, if there is nothing else around, European dragons will also sometimes eat humans. So, be careful out there, folks. Some examples of European dragons are those that appeared in medieval lore. Knights in shining armor, cavalry, archers, and ballista would be deployed to battle against these age-old beasts. As mentioned before, Merlin, who is dubbed the founding father of Western Dragonology, dealt almost exclusively with European dragons and had some run-ins with gargoyles as well. A very popular movie and book saga, The Lord of the Rings, is where Smaug makes his debut. A towering, treasure-hoarding, fire-breathing, human language-speaking dragon, Smaug is a prime example of the European species. The red she-dragon from Shrek that was guarding Fiona's tower is yet another example. Though you will see no natural evidence ever of a dragon mating with a donkey, I personally guarantee it. In Sleeping Beauty, when Maleficent is fighting against the prince, she turns herself into a dragon. Though in this form, she doesn't quite look like a European dragon in this instance. In the newer Maleficent movie, she transforms her assistant, Diaval, into what looks like a crow and European dragon hybrid. In Celtic lore, European dragons were revered as gods, much like Zeus or Aphrodite, controlling water, fertility, bountiful harvests, and overall good tidings. These dragons would be given offerings from Celtic villages to appease them. Now, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, like that last piece of chocolate mousse cake, or like this pilot episode of the Dragonology podcast. I would like to give a special shout out to Dr. Ernest Drake for his extensive research into dragons, and Beatrice Croak for founding the secret and ancient Society of Dragonologists. For without them, there would be no Dragonology, there would be no research, and there would be no podcast. Information in this podcast was cited from Dragonology, the Handbook, and Dragonology, the Complete Book of Dragons, both by Dr. Ernest Drake. The music in this podcast was brought to you by the musical talent of Motoi Sakuraba and Shinji Tamura. The songs used were Walking on Tetheala, Search a Seal, Tetayala, and Romani Caravan. These compositions can also be found in the popular Japanese role-playing game Tales of Symphonia. The works of Ken Nakagawa and Daisuke Achiwa can also be heard. This particular composure is called Welcome to the Magical Workshop. This song can be found in the Japanese role-playing game Monokimiya, Student Alliance. I do not own any rights to this music or game content herein whatsoever. Background provided in thanks to Awesomeness TV. They can be found on YouTube at youtube.com/awesomeness-tv. But mostly, I'd like to thank you, listeners. Without you, this podcast would not exist as well. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening with your curious ears. Hope to see you again next time, where I'll be going more in depth into tracking strategies, the second of the 5 F's of Dragonology, Foresight, Draco Occidentalis Minimus, or Gargoyles, and perhaps I'll even field some questions from you, listeners. Until next time, keep your eyes peeled, because dragons are out there, and they're waiting for someone worthy to find them. That person could be you.